You know, when I wanted to do this session first, and then you're come up, Carmen, you stand beside her, I'm on the other side. And then, like I said, you're next, and then I'm gonna call it together, and then you shut, and then I'll go inside. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so we're gonna go back in. I'm gonna like a few minutes. Okay, everyone, can you guys pull close together, please? And then, are you guys gonna hold her back? You guys, you can sit them over there if you want. We'll be ready to do it. Thank you, Elle. Okay, y'all ready? Good morning. My name is Nakima Levy-Towns, and I'm the president of the Minneapolis NAACP, as well as a civil rights attorney. We have gathered here as a coalition of groups to stand in support of Rayanne Hayes, who was allegedly, at least according to the media and according to Mike Freeman, Jamar Clark's girlfriend. And there were also allegations that he domestically abused her. Well, Rayanne Hayes is here to set the record straight. She is tired of all of the rumors that have come forward. She is tired of people who have placed blame on her for what happened. And she did not expect that her story would be a central part of Mike Freeman's narrative. And so she has decided to come forward and speak her own truth. We will also hear from Tito Wilson, who is a local barbershop owner, as well as one of the witnesses who was present on the night that Jamar Clark was killed. We believe that the information that is coming forward, both through Rayanne Hayes and Tito Wilson, are grounds for there to be a reopening of the investigation into the shooting death of Jamar Clark and the appointment of a special prosecutor in this case. It is clear from our perspective that there is a challenge in prosecutors being able to hold officers accountable with whom they work hand in hand. Mike Freeman's presentation at the press conference last week left us with far more questions than answers. And many in the Black community are dissatisfied by what we heard from Mike Freeman. We're dissatisfied by the fact that out of the 20 African American witnesses who came forward, that their testimony was counted, and it has resulted in a miscarriage of justice. Every day in Hennepin County courtrooms, African Americans are prosecuted by Hennepin County attorneys, largely on the basis of testimony that comes forward. Sometimes it's testimony from confidential informants. And so to have a situation like the murder of Jamar Clark occurring and for Mike Freeman to not count the testimony of the witnesses is hypocritical and it's unacceptable. We want to know what happened to Jamar Clark. We demand justice for Jamar Clark, and we're here standing in solidarity. So we're going to have Rayanne Hayes come to the microphone next. I would ask that the media wait until the end of the press conference. We will take a few questions on her behalf, but to allow her to tell her story in her own words. So next up is Rayanne Hayes.
Hi, my name is Rayanne Hayes. The night in question, what happened, I never got beaten, never called the police. Said I was beaten by my boyfriend. I don't even know where that story came from. You know, I said I was 60, I was drunk with the birthday party. You know, it was altercation. I tried to break it up. Jamar tried to stop it, and I pulled away from him. I fell, and I twisted my head. I called 2 hours later. I said it wasn't an emergency. I said I think I hurt my ankle. Never said anything about domestic violence. Never said anything about my boyfriend beating me. I don't even know where that came from at all, whatsoever. And you can hear this, they have the 911 call on the internet. I was calm, I wasn't hysterical, so I don't know what they're talking about. I never made a police report to anyone. Reg is the first person I talked to about the whole situation, ever. And Chris Olsen, I spoke with him briefly for 5 minutes, but he put a 12-page interview on the internet. I spoke to him not even 5 minutes. So all the stories that's going around are not true. I'm just sick of the rumors.
What was your relationship like with Jamar?
He was a close friend of mine. We were just friends. Like I said before, just because you hang with someone does not mean you're in a relationship with them. That was hearsay and brought up on the news. My name shouldn't be brought up on the news at all. Even if I wasn't a domestic violence victim, my name shouldn't be brought up on the news. You're endangering my life, my family's life. That's ridiculous. And the story's fabricated. And I think the news channel should have checked their facts on the story before they let it roll. Simple as that. That's ridiculous.
So can you talk about what happened at the scene where the party was, how you got injured, and then what happened when the ambulance arrived, and what was Jamar's role in all of that?
When I hurt myself, I went upstairs. I called ambulance because my ankle started swelling. It was like almost 2 hours after the fact. It wasn't even my fight, it was somebody else's fight, and I tried to break it up. I was trying to interfere with somebody else's business. Okay. So when I called him, I said, you know, there was an altercation downstairs, and the 911 lady said, who is it? I said, I don't know. It's a lot of people. You know, I don't know. But I sprained my ankle. I can't walk. I need an ambulance. I said, it's not an emergency. I just said, I think I need an ambulance. And that was it, and that's all. I don't know who called the police and said they got beaten by their boyfriend. I don't know who said it was domestic. I don't even know where that came from. It never came from me. I never signed anything. I never had an interview with Mike Freeman. I've never seen Mike Freeman until I seen him on the news the other day. And I still didn't know who he was. So I don't even know where he gets his story from.
What happened when the ambulance came?
They took me in a wheelchair to the ambulance, put me on a gurney, and put me in. Jamar tried to come with me. He told him he was my son, because, you know, they won't let you in the ambulance if you're not family. They wouldn't let him in. He hit the door, and he walked off. You can plainly see out of the ambulance camera, he was not hysterical. He wasn't being the windows. He wasn't going crazy. He was just standing there. So I don't...
What happened when you got into the hospital? And then went to the hospital?
I went to the hospital. I drove off. I don't know what happened after that. I wasn't there. I don't know.
When did you find out that he was killed?
2 days later, after the sedatives and stuff wore off. I had emergency surgery on my ankle. I had all kind of morphine, Dilaudid, Vicodin, everything. I was doped up for like 2 days. So when I finally came to, I called my cousin. I'm like, you know, where's Jamar? She told me he's dead. I'm like, no way. And then when I was in the hospital, when I woke up, I'm like, what happened? The nurse said, no. She's like, yes, a police report. I never made a police report. So where did they get that information from?
What kind of person was Jamar Clark?
He was amazing. He was life. Like, he was energetic. He was fun. He was everything, you know? He was a good person. He loved life. Never in a million years would he say, I'm ready to die. He was just starting to live his life.
Anything else that you want to add?
No, I want the media to stop following me around. Stop taping stuff on my family's doors and my friends' doors. Places I don't even live. Stop sitting outside for hours. That's ridiculous. That's all I have to say. Leave me alone. And check your own facts and your own story.
Rayanne, just why the discrepancy?
As you heard before, at the end of the press conference, we will take questions.
Just asking.
Go ahead. Next is Tito Wilson, who's one of the witnesses.
The night that Jamar Clark was killed,
Louder.
the night that Jamar Clark was killed by the Minneapolis Police Department, the story that they gave was far different than what I witnessed. Myself and some friends were coming out of the Elks Lodge. As soon as we got outside, we noticed across the street there was an altercation going on between the Minneapolis police. There were two Minneapolis police and Jamar Clark. At the point where I walked in and saw what was going on, they already had Jamar on the ground. I couldn't determine if there was any handcuffs there, But what I could determine is that they had Jamar on the ground, thoroughly pinned down. He was not fighting. He wasn't like doing all these weird movements, trying to get a gun. That's the story that they put out, but it's not true. They had Jamar on the ground. They had him pinned down thoroughly. And one of the cops had his knee in Jamar's middle part of his body. The other cop was kind of bouncing around. I mean, once they put out the video, we could see this officer kind of bouncing around on the ground. It didn't look like proper police procedure, but he was bouncing around in some kind of weird maneuvering. And to me, I got the impression that, I started saying to myself, I hope they don't kill this young man. I got the impression that he was trying to provide cover for the officer to ultimately shoot him, because there was a large crowd of people on the side of the street where we were. So I just couldn't believe that after about maybe a minute or so, the gun went off. So the report that they put out is not true. And my question is, I got several questions, but one of my questions is, they said that Jamar had taken the gun from the right side of this officer's body and put it around to the small of his back. And I find that hard to true because, that's hard to believe, because when we watched the video that the attorney put out himself, when the officer got up off the ground, his gun and his belt was miraculously right back in the place where it started off at. So they told so many untruths, and furthermore, why can't we get DNA? They said, fingerprints. They said that there was DNA all over this officer's gun, his belt, and other areas. Well, I can believe that because this kid just got shot in the head. So there's going to be DNA matter everywhere out there. So, they told a lot of stories that were just not true. And I had a friend of mine ask me, what is your interest, now that the case is, maybe over with, what is your interest in still being involved? And, I thought about it for a little bit. And I said, well, we see all these cases all around the country of black men, whether they're young boys, middle-aged or older men, being killed by police. And the police always put out a narrative about either I was afraid for my life, or they were reaching for my gun, or he attacked me. But I would say the reason why I say involved, because, I was once a 12-year-old kid in a park or in my community playing with a gun, like Tamir Rice down in Ohio. I was once 17 years old, going to the store, getting some candy and juice, and walking home and having people looking at me like I was up to something, like Trayvon Martin. I was once out with my friends, after celebrating New Year's Eve, and probably got into some, arguments or whatever, like Oscar Grant. And I also was once young, arguing with a cop. I've had an altercation with a cop, like they said Jamar did, but I actually did get into an altercation. So the reason why I say involved is because I want to see justice. I don't want to see any more of this senseless killing of unarmed young black males by police. So that's where we're at.
Tito brought up an excellent point with regard to the DNA matter. As an attorney, I found the statements by Mike Freeman claiming that DNA evidence is a truth serum to really be laughable, primarily because of the fact that there are so many people who are sitting in prison and jail who could potentially be exonerated with DNA evidence, and you have prosecutors who typically won't even use that evidence as a basis for that person's release. And as I mentioned earlier, eyewitness testimony is frequently used in Hennepin County courtrooms across the county to prosecute people, but here suddenly, miraculously, it doesn't count. And to isolate the reason why he's not taking their substantive testimony into account is related to handcuffs is very frustrating because there are substantive aspects of the witness's testimony that people should be looking at, including the media. So it's been very frustrating as the African American community see these narratives being spun that are almost word for word of what Mike Freeman had to say, without the media being willing to dig more deeply and uncover the truth. We are tired of people being killed and harassed and over-criminalized at the hands of the police. We're also tired of people who are relying upon the public's ignorance with regard to DNA evidence and using that as a justification for a story that, as we're taught in law school, does not pass the laugh test. So that's why we're here. And we really hope that you all will do your jobs after you hear this and begin to question the narratives that have come forward, rather than continuing to reinforce information that is in contradiction to 20 African American witnesses. Next, I'm
simply put, most of us in Minnesota was not there that night on Plymouth Avenue when Jamar Clark was murdered. And most of us can be clear about this right here. Smoke and mirrors. Everyone is tying in and digging into the unnecessary pieces that really has happened right now. The biggest question right here really lies in what Mike Freeman said at the beginning of his speech, when he himself admitted that the tools that we have used as a police department are unnecessary and forceful, and we have to change those tactics. When he himself said that the hold that they used on Jamar Clark was used at a previous state, the cop, I believe it was California, that he used, not even clear whether we even supposed to be using it here. And so the smoke and mirrors that we're trying to put into, bringing Ray Ann to the front, trying to get to the reason why the 911 call was made, really all of that is irrelevant when we really get to the point. The bottom line is excessive force was used and executed a black man on the Plymouth Avenue in a black community. He wasn't even, and so that's really the gut of it all. That's really the system of it all, to talk about the tactics that we have allowed to be put in place, the laws that have protected the people that are supposed to protect us, so that they can kill us and execute us no longer among themselves, but they execute us among our family, among our friends, and among our community. Was excessive force used? Bottom line, did Jamar Clark have to be murdered that night? Right. That is the question at hand. Are the tactics used outdated and dangerous towards the people that the MPD is called to protect and to serve? I don't know if they are afraid of African Americans, but doggone it, I'm afraid of them. That is really the truth. Did he, at the end of the day, let your conscience speak for you, let your heart speak for you? An unarmed, larger, smaller built black man by two skilled officers. Was it any other way that they could have taken him down? Where were the tasers? And then how convenient for they didn't have cameras? They didn't have cameras and no fingerprints? How convenient? How convenient that night? That's really the question at hand. Everything else is just secondary to keep us from asking the bigger questions. And we need to go after these laws and change the laws so that they really can protect, so the police can do what they need to do.
Next, we'll have Misha Graham from Black Lives Matter Minneapolis.
Good morning. I'm here today with a heavy heart. I'm here today disappointed and disturbed. Mike Freeman said that he would put all of the evidence online for us to come to our own conclusions. When that evidence came out and Ray Ann's witness statement was put online, she says very clearly she never dated Jamar Clark and he never hit her. For Mike Freeman to overlook this blatant fact and ignore this witness testimony calls into question his competency and his relationship with the Minneapolis Police Department. We have to start looking at why this evidence was not taken into account, and if so, what other evidence could have been overlooked or neglected at this point. We are asking that people not accept this narrative that is handed to us and to start to really dig into why we want to believe this so badly. Why do we want to believe that this man deserved to die so badly? We have to start thinking critically about the people that are making these decisions. We have to use our own minds and come to our own conclusions. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Mel Reeves from the Twin Cities Coalition for Justice for Jamar.
Good morning. I think it's imperative that you all take seriously what you hear here. You've heard from Sister Rayanne, you heard from Brother Tito, some of the outlets here have recorded different witnesses, and you know they've told a different story than the story that Mike Freeman has told. And what Rayanne is saying is very important, that it's important that people tell the truth. If you're going to write the story, I also am a journalist, write both sides. There is another side to the story that's been told over and over and over again. And I think now the press's responsibility is to tell this other side. Because Mike Freeman has told some stories and codified it with the law, does not make it right. I'll remind you all, as students of history, you know that slavery was legal and was very wrong, and we fought against it. This decision was legal and very wrong, and we're going to fight against it. We're going to call on our community not to bow to lower their heads, to walk around in despair. We can win this because we are right. We have right on our side, and we're going to demand that the governor or whatever government agency that can reopen this thing, we're going to demand they reopen, and we're going to continue with the demand. The Twin Cities Coalition for sure, NAACP for sure, Black Lives Matter for sure, are going to continue to demand what we demanded, what brothers said at the beginning after he got killed. We're going to demand that the people who killed Jamar Clark, the police who killed Jamar Clark, officers Ringenberg and Swartzy, be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. That's what the law requires in this system, right? In this land, in this country. And unless we don't live in what we say we live in, unless we don't live in democracy, the police are not supposed to be above the law. And we're demanding, since they're not above the law, that they be held accountable for their actions. Because you've heard the witnesses, they killed Jamar Clark. There was no struggle, there was no grabbing of the gun, which is why there are no fingerprints on it. We denounce Mike Freeman's story and the system that tries to support it, and we demand that they do the right thing and prosecute Ringenberg and Swartz for killing Jamar Clark. Thank you.
Thank you. And beyond that, we also feel that the past history of Ringenberg and Swartz are important in this situation, even though we've seen stories about them in the back of the Star Tribune about their past history. That needs to be front and center. Look how the media worked to demonize Jamar Clark and only paint one side of who he was, and yet when it comes to officers who have engaged in misconduct in other jurisdictions, we're not even asking the questions about how they got hired at the Minneapolis Police Department, a department that we know has been out of control for years, that many of you all have covered stories on time and time again, and yet somehow, here in this case, it's hard to believe what the Black community is saying, even with all of the evidence showing that they have engaged in a pattern of abusive conduct towards the African American community for decades. That's why we are here. We are frustrated. We are tired of the media being complicit in these stories that are coming forward. And we want the public to see that there are two sides of the story. We don't want the public to be ignorant and to look at the smoke and mirrors when they hear DNA evidence about some sweat being on a gun. Of course, if you're sitting on a person, they're going to be sweating. Does that mean that Jamar Clark grabbed for a gun when 20 witnesses are saying that he didn't? No, it doesn't. So why is that so difficult for the media and the public to believe? We also need to stop discounting information that comes forward from African Americans. That's right. Stop treating us as though our voices and our perspectives don't matter. We tell people to cooperate with the police and cooperate with these investigations, and then when they do, we act like they're not credible and what they have to say doesn't count. And then we're blamed when we don't want to cooperate with the system in the future. That makes absolutely no sense. And some people have asked us, would we have called for a grand jury process if we had known that Mike Freeman was going to do what he did? Well, number one, we already knew that Mike Freeman was going to do what he did. So we were not surprised by what he brought forward. We were surprised at how blatantly obvious some of the holes in the story were. And I've said before, even Ray Charles could see through the logic of Mike Freeman's arguments. So why is it so difficult for many people here today to be able to see that there are lots of holes in the stories that came forward? We weren't surprised. The difference here was that what Mike Freeman presented would have happened behind closed doors in a grand jury process through secret proceedings, where we would never know which witnesses were called, how the information was framed, which evidence was presented, and we would all be left to just believe that, oh, the grand jury process was fair. Do you see how clearly It is a one-sided system. Typically, if the case had actually gone to a jury, if he had decided to prosecute, then the officers would have had a jury of their peers who could weigh both sides of the evidence. When we hear someone throwing out DNA as a truth serum, you would have defense attorneys able to counter that and put on experts who can show the other side of the story. You'd be able to hear from the different witnesses about what they saw and not just have their testimony isolated as to whether or not they saw handcuffs. Handcuffs were on the scene, so something happened with those handcuffs. So at the end of the day, we want justice. Justice for Jamar and justice for all victims of police brutality. And we know just this morning, yet another person was killed by the Minneapolis Police Department. Repeating a pattern that every single person who's been killed by MPD since 2009 has been a person of color. Maybe you all think that that's normal, but we've seen plenty of white people who have engaged in crime and all types of things apprehended, and they're still alive. So something is wrong with this system. With that, we're going to take a moment for a couple of questions.
Ms. Levy, hi, first of all, thank you, Ms. Hayes, for telling your story. I wanted to clarify, did Mike Freeman ever interview you during his investigation? Did I understand that right?
Yeah, I didn't
Into the microphone.
I didn't even know who he
The
was.
question was whether or not Mike Freeman ever interviewed Rayanne Hayes.
I never knew who he was until I saw him on TV the other day. When I heard my name on the news. And then I looked, I'm like, who is that saying my name? And they said it was Mike Freeman. I'm like, well, who is he? So I've never seen him before in my life. I've never talked to him before, ever.
Did you feel during his investigation into all of this he should have talked to you?
Yeah, if he was going to put my name on the news. Yeah.
Did anyone from his office?
No one. First person, the only person I ever talked to was Red Cat about any of this, ever. No, and Chris Olsen. I talked to him for 5 minutes.
And who is he from? Where is he from?
He said he was from DC.
He's
I don't
the first
know.
That was
interview.
the February transcript that's online.
Yeah,
So
but
you
I
spoke
talked
with
to him
in
for like
February.
5 minutes. So how did he get a 12-page transcript? Really? I'm like, it wasn't even 5 minutes.
And have you read the other transcript from that
I haven't
initial
read any of
night?
it.
Because there's some discrepancy in the story that changes, and we're just
I
wondering
never-
if you could address that.
Let her answer.
But that goes to how we cover the story.
I never gave any type of interview for there to be a discrepancy in the first night. I've never gave one. So
Now,
where did that come from?
Can you tell the media what happened once you got inside the ambulance? You said that
They gave me a shot in my arm because my ankle had swollen and I was in pain. And I don't remember anything after that. No one ever came to the hospital. No one. Except for the security guard, making sure I was okay. I never knew that I was, what do you call it? No one could see where I was at in the hospital.
what was it?
My family couldn't call me. I didn't even know that. My
They
family,
had
my
her-
daughter, no
they-
one, I didn't even
They
know
had her
that.
under non-disclosure status in the hospital, and she didn't know why. So so when people would call the hospital looking for her, they would say that there's no one by that name, and she never asked to be under non-disclosure status.
So, Rayanne, where do you think the accounts that police said that Jamar was your boyfriend and domestic violence came from?
I have no idea. I still want to see the proof of.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me.
I still want to see the documents. They say.
Anyway, tell you things.
Okay, go ahead.
I said I still want to see.
Is going in the way of the district attorney and everybody, and y'all painting a story from the white perspective.
Go ahead.
I still haven't heard the phone call where it said, I've been beaten up by my boyfriend. I need an ambulance right now. It never came from me at all.
So, the first time that you heard that
He's telling us to run for office and that he will support us. Thank you.
Okay, wow. So for our clarity, can you tell us the first time that you heard that Jamar was your boyfriend and there was a domestic violence incident?
No, the other day on the news. I've been hearing it like from people on the street, but I've never heard it publicly. I heard it on the news publicly the other day. I'm like, my boyfriend, a domestic. I didn't know that people were like, I didn't know I was wanted like that. That's why I didn't come forward at first, because I didn't want nothing to do with it. I didn't want the focus to be on me, because I'm not the focus. The focus is why they killed me. You know, it don't matter what happened before. It happened why they did what they did. And I think people are trying to put the focus on me and not on the problem at hand.
And did you have your boyfriend at the time?
Yes, and I still do. Like, really.
Ms. Hayes, I'm a little unclear, and this may be helpful. From what I heard you say in that first interview, you were medicated.
Yeah.
During that point in time.
Yeah.
So the officers who came to the hospital or the paramedics.
What officer?
She said she didn't recall.
Any of them.
Can you address some people on Twitter, as I've been tweeting your statements of saying that you changed your story? Could you address some of those critics out there?
I really don't care what you say. People are going to make up stuff anyway, so it doesn't matter. I'm telling you what I'm saying now, and that's it.
In the transcript, we talked earlier, you talked about the discrepancies, and you talked about how you were so drugged up. They gave you all these drugs, and they talked to you. It was as if you were almost thinking that what they were saying, that Jamar was trying to get in the ambulance and attack you. You were like, all the questions were coming so fast because you weren't within your right mind.
Right, but they didn't even ask me those questions though. And if they did, I don't remember. So, I mean, that's crazy for them to say that I answered questions for them when I wasn't even in my right mind. I was drugged up with all kind of morphine and stuff on my leg, on my ankle, so.
And one of the interesting parts about what Rayanne has to say is that if you listen to the ambulance call that she made, and the fact that she was calm, cool, and collected, and then the fact that in February she's saying the same thing that she said here today, why would Mike Freeman mischaracterize who she was to Jamar Clark and the incident that happened? What he could have said was, if he felt that there were conflicting reports or different information, articulated that, as opposed to giving the perspective that he gave, which is more consistent with the police version as opposed to what Rayanne actually told investigators in February, which was posted on the transcripts online. So we have people contacting us on Facebook saying that this story is different from what Mike Freeman had to say.
Manipulating points of view, I'd say.
And the 911 call. There was nothing in the 911 call said anything about my boyfriend beating me up. My boyfriend's abused me. None of that at all. I wasn't hollering. Did I sound drunk to you guys? I mean, I'm serious, man.
And how do you characterize your relationship with him? A friend, or what?
He was a very good friend of mine.
Is her name spelled with 2 N's or 1 N? 2.
Okay, so we will conclude at this time.
Are you going to do anything to reopen the case that you're calling for?
We are calling, so I will just reiterate as we wrap up that we are calling for a re-investigation into the shooting death of Jamar Clark. We're asking for the appointment of a special prosecutor, preferably a law firm or a retired judge, an independent special prosecutor, to really delve more deeply into this case. And we know that there is a pending federal investigation, which we welcome, but we would also call upon the Department of Justice once again to place the Minneapolis Police Department under a federal receivership. There is more than enough evidence to suggest that there are patterns and practices of discrimination and abuse at the hands of the Minneapolis Police Department, and they need to be reined in so that more people do not become harassed or even killed at the hands of the police for no good reason. So thank you all for being here today. The Black Lives Matter Minneapolis chapter will be issuing a statement that reiterates the demands that we are making. Thank you. And one last thing, I would ask that the media please respect the privacy of Ms. Rayanne Hayes. Please stop harassing her, following her around, going to her relatives' homes. It was difficult enough for her to come here today and face the public and put her face on television, which is not something that anyone would want to do under these circumstances while they're grieving. So please respect her privacy. I've asked her to contact me if the media is harassing her, and I'm going to follow up with your organizations if that is the case. Now that you've heard her story, allow investigators to exercise their due diligence and look more into this. Thank you.
I do have one last question. Do you know if Jamar Clark had any incidents or altercations with the officers prior to this altercation?
I'm not sure about those particular officers, but I heard, from my understanding, he was in the process of filing a lawsuit
Something that happened in July.
for something that happened in July. So,
And I'm just for clarification, when you're talking about reopening the case, who do you ask? Do you ask the governor? Do you ask, where's your next step up?
well, some have recommended that the Attorney General's office set up a special prosecutorial and investigative unit in officer-involved shooting cases. That is something that we would like to put on the table as well.
So you'll be asking.
We are making that request, yes.
Just want to make sure you're going to. Who's above him?
Well, the challenge is figuring out who's willing to actually hold officers accountable when they kill people. Because in the state of Minnesota, we have not seen any accountability for officer-involved shooting cases. And I hope people understand that this is a part of a pattern here. It's a part of a pattern where officers are not indicted when they kill unarmed people in the state of Minnesota. And that is just like what's happening around the country, contrary to Mike Freeman claiming that this case is different. It is very similar to what's been happening around the country with unarmed black people being killed by police. So that is all that we have for you today. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for your patience. I have to see you afterwards because I need to connect.
All right, what's up, everyone? This is the Minnesota Government Center. That's Rhiannon Hayes right there, who just spoke. You can look back at the press conference as you want. We are still following the story, as you can tell. If you have any questions, just drop them in the chat. I'll see what I can do. I'm going to stay live for a little bit longer, but the press conference is over.
Well, because he was here. The man
over here.
posted
He's over
it
there.
in his site. I was trying to see if he. There he is. Gaetano. Yeah. Well, I asked him. Yeah. And I asked him not
And I wanted to ask you,
Mel, I had a question for you if you have a second.
You're with?
I'm with you, Ryan. Just basically, so after the non-indictment came back, people hit the streets, and the demand was the exact same, was to prosecute the police. And how is that even a demand you can make when they just didn't prosecute the police? They showed no interest in giving justice to the people. But then the people hit the streets and demand the same thing when they're already shown they have no interest of giving it to them. So what is that? Like, how do you say that was the demand? Like, why is that the demand? I'm just confused, I guess.
When you go to the store, I don't know if you have any kids. If you've ever gone to the store to get milk for your child, right? And they didn't have any milk on the shelf, right? And all they had was vinegar. Did you take the vinegar home? No. You kept going and looking in the stores until you found the milk, right? You went to the store and got what you wanted. What we want is prosecution. What we want is those police to be punished. So we're going to keep asking for what we want. Doesn't matter, right? Because we have a government of laws, right? We have a system of laws. So we can keep demanding. It's possible. Anything's possible in this system if we demand it enough. If 20,000 people get in that street tomorrow, they're going to figure out something, my friend. That's how this works. That pressure changes things. This system can do whatever it chooses to do when it wants to. If you keep asking for the same thing and you keep demanding it, you keep getting people to support the idea, they will hear our call. The government can, it's not impossible. The government can reopen the case, sir. These things can happen. So that's why we're asking for prosecution of police, because that's what we want. We're not crazy or stupid. It's an intelligent thing. We're going to keep asking for what we want. We don't have to accept the law as it is. It's not right. We don't have to accept something that's wrong, right? You can keep pushing for it, right? And that's what we're going to do. Does that make sense?
It does. From listening to people, I heard people in the streets who are like, why are we asking for this thing?
I didn't hear anybody say that.
Okay.
I've heard
all I did was walk through the streets.
I've heard a single person say that.
Do you know
what's going on here?
Thought about
Just all lives.
That's what we're doing.
the whole
That's our point.
fight the whole system.
That's our point.
Okay?
the whole system.
All right, don't vote.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Earth is flat.
Anyways, all right, I just wanted to ask that. I'm gonna go down. Yeah, this is the news one, right? We are at a press conference where we just heard Rayanne. She is already out of here. She basically said that the narrative that Mike Freeman used was completely made up. She doesn't remember it. She even alluded that after she had broken her ankle that night under her own sort of, she tried to break up a fight. Her statement. She tried to break up a fight, fell, hurt her ankle. Jamar Clark was trying to help her. There was a police call she referenced that she doesn't ever mention that she was assaulted. And then at that point, she was given drugs when she got into the ambulance because her ankle was broken. She ended up in a hospital where she was put in isolation. There was a different wording for that. And if there was an interview that happened, if you look at the dates of the interview, it would have to happen that night. She was on morphine, she said, and various other painkillers. She doesn't even remember that interview. So that's what she said right here today. You hear the communities are back out. Twin Cities Justice for Jamar, at the NAACP, at Minneapolis, Black Lives Matter, all out here showing each other support and showing the community support as well. And again, we are Uniform Right. I'm Lorenzo, your host. If you want to support us and make all this possible, please donate to us. Go to uniformright.ninja. Support our work at the top. Click it. Drop what you can. Thanks a lot. And thanks for everyone who has been donating. We're able to do a bunch of stuff we've never been able to do before because of you. So thank you. And that's it.